We need to get the next work session started. If everybody will either sit down or leave the room, we'd appreciate it. This one's on liquor license and municipal process. Let's do for the record. Eric.
Felix Rivera.
John Weddleton.
Forrest Dunbar.
Dick Trainee.
Mandy Honest, Clerk's Office. Barbara Jones.
Barbara, we'll turn the time over to you, ma'am.
All right, well, thank you. And I am just going to turn this over to Mandy. We've been talking about doing this for a while, and we have Mr. Croft to thank for getting us going on it. So there you go, Mandy.
So I know many of you have dealt with liquor licenses for a long time. You remember some of the most interesting stories. You also know the process very well. Some of you may be newer to the process, but you know the bar scene really well. Either way.
Okay, that's fine. That's fair. That's fair.
You looked at the rest record, huh? You're going to go there, okay.
But either way, I hope this information is useful to you, and afterwards you feel ready to tackle what's coming next. As we get towards the end of the year, the clerk's office prepares for the flurry of action that is liquor license renewal season. Part of that prep work is working closely with the Public Safety Committee, and the new chair, Mr. Croft, has supported the clerk's office in putting together this work session. The Public Safety Committee has also historically been the committee that all of the liquor license issues or any concerns have been heard at. We really appreciate the committee's work at the clerk's office. They make our work a little bit easier with their guidance when it comes to the liquor licenses. So for this reason, you may have noticed that assembly documents regarding liquor licenses are sponsored by the chair, the vice chair, and the chair of the Public Safety Committee. There have already been a few inquiries regarding upcoming renewals, and the clerk's office works really hard to get what you need. Mr. Trainee actually has a few in his district that he regularly checks up on, and the clerk's office is really happy to keep you guys informed about the liquor establishments in your areas. So if you have any questions, please let us know. So I'll begin with when we start the renewal process. First kicks off for the clerk's office on September 1st. September 1st of each year, the clerk's office is required to notify community councils of all liquor licenses within their boundaries that they will be reviewed for renewal that year, and advise them that they may request the assembly grant them a public hearing on any renewal within their boundary. This notice goes out by email, and the assembly members are attached to it or copied to it.
And that's really important because remember the renewals are on a 2-year cycle. So they might be on this year or they might be next year. And if the community council has a problem, they've got to get the right year.
And so for this notice, I put an example up. This is the email that's sent out. We send a notice to the community councils with a little blurb about what the clerk's office is required to do for notification, and then it kind of gives them a little breakdown of what they need to do if they would like to require or request a public hearing.
Has that been sent out for this year?
Not yet.
But it's close,
usually,
right?
Yeah, it's on or before September 1st. So usually we get it out towards the end of August, so it's coming up. And then a picture on the right is a spreadsheet of the list that was sent out last year. And I apologize that it's kind of small, but you can kind of see that we organize it by the community council. And so it's easier this way. The community council can just scroll down to the areas that are under their area. They can look at those licenses. It has the establishment, the license type, and the location. And then this is also easier for assembly members. This way you can similarly scroll through, find the ones that are in your areas. And this, I think, makes it easier for the assembly members to work together with the community councils in their area. So the community council submits their, so in, no, I did not. Okay. So like I said, this is a great opportunity for assembly members to reach out to the community councils and compare their notes. to see if there are any establishments that may need some attention. If a community council wishes to address concerns or issues regarding an establishment, they can request a public hearing before the assembly. They are asked to submit their request in the form of a community council resolution with as many details as possible and why they're details as to why they're requesting the hearing. It should also include a vote, and it's preferred that they list the total number of yay and nay votes and any public comments that they've received. The request for public hearings should be submitted to the clerk no later than October 15th. And since this is somewhat of a short time frame between September 1st and October 15th, like I said, working together with the community council can help get their requests submitted in a timely manner.
So if the assembly members or their aides are going to community council meetings in September and even the first part of October, if you want to remind your community councils, don't forget you should have received this email from the clerk's office and take a look at these liquor license applicants who are renewing this year. That would be great.
Barbara, I go to the Federation meeting, and I'll be going to the one in September. Remind all the heads of the community councils to do this.
Great. Thank you, Dick.
No problem.
So what I have up now is an example of a community council resolution that the clerk's office received in the past. The community council submitted a request as a resolution. The clerk's office notified the assembly member whose district the establishment was in and sent the request to the chair, the vice chair, and the chair of the public safety committee. The clerk's office works with these members to bring the public hearing request to the body. The request in the form of a resolution with supporting documentation allows the assembly to assess the issue and come to an informed decision that is not arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable. The community council resolution and any supporting documentation submitted with it will be attached to the liquor license renewal application once it's received from the Alcohol Marijuana Control Office. So you can kind of see they listed their votes. So they have the total of votes, they have the liquor licenses in question, and I didn't do all of the supporting documentation that was attached with it. This is just their resolution, but that's what we look for when we receive these, and it's very helpful in getting all of these, and I think that's something also.
Mr. Rivera has a question, ma'am.
Can you detail a little bit what supporting documentation looks like?
So if there are any kind of issues, if they've documented them with dates, if they have pictures, if they have contacted
Videotapes.
APD and they have any police reports, anything that shows that they have been kind of working with the establishment to try and correct the issue, and if it's persistent, then they can show they've made all of these steps to try and correct what's been going on, and there's still an issue, they can bring all of that to the assembly to kind of make an ultimate judgment.
The other thing, Felix, is if they've got an ABC violation, then we need to know what the violation was, and Mandy can get that for us. Because sometimes some of the people, community councils, just don't like the liquor license. That's all well and good, but we have to have some reason.
But
ABC violation helps us.
thank you, Mr. Chair. But to be clear, an ABC violation is not a requirement for the resolution.
No.
Okay.
No,
But it does help.
Yeah, and a lot of times I don't know if the community councils get copies of those or know where to find them. I'm sure they do, but AMCO had been sending those to the clerk's office along with the renewals, so it was just easier to have them with our information as opposed to requiring the community council to provide it.
Okay.
I think some of you might be familiar with Mr. Constant's efforts regarding liquor establishments in his neighborhood in Fairview before he was elected. And I believe the Fairview Community Council actually set up a public safety subcommittee that worked with 2 liquor establishments that they had problems with. And, you know, it took them years of work, but it's my understanding that one of the licensees, the community council did not protest because they asked them to do some things and that establishment cooperated. The other establishment didn't, and it's my understanding that that establishment is the first license that the Assembly has protested successfully in over 20 years. So the community council's work that that little subcommittee did was pretty vital to allowing the Assembly to make that decision to protest renewal of the license.
Thank you.
Keep in mind, we're only advisory to the state. In other words, we cannot shut somebody's alcohol license down. That's state issue.
Right.
So sometimes people will ask us from the community council, why don't you guys just shut it down? We can't. We advise AMCO on it. They make the final decision. Anyway, Mandy, go ahead. Sorry, man.
No, you're good. So, like I said, any of those are attached to the renewal applications. And every year around November is when the clerk's office begins to receive the liquor license renewal notices and copies of the applications from AMCO. The liquor licenses, as you probably already know, and as Dick was saying, are issued by the state of Alaska and are valid for 2 years. Alaska Statute Chapter 4.11 regards liquor licensing requirements. One of the requirements of the board is to provide the local governing body within 10 days of any application that they receive so that the local governing body may protest.
John has a question, Mandy.
I think actually, I'm sorry to back up a little bit because that's important. And so we're advisory to the state. So
We're
we have to
advisory to
build
the
a
state.
huge case, not just for the assembly to say, yeah, this is a problem, but really probably more so for the state.
Right.
And I know Tom's mentioned a couple. We used to have one, I think it was In and Out across from Blaine's, that was doing the little bottles, but they got bought out.
Yeah.
But now there's a one at 36 in Arctic that's been a problem for forever. The community council's dealt with that.
That one, the Assembly put restrictions on a couple of years ago, and the
Is that okay?
When they come up for renewal, we have in the past.
And they were very good at working with us.
Sorry, John. In the past, we have when they come up for renewal, put restrictions on the size bottles they can sell. We can do that. But to actually pull their license, that's not our purview. That's the reason we wrote the marijuana laws. As Amy is off to tell you, we wrote it so that somebody has complete control with marijuana, unlike alcohol.
No, I understand. Thanks.
Complete that story, it was my amendment in the legislature that allowed us to put conditions, and the alcohol lobby fought it a bunch, but we had this horrible right up or down Nero at the forum, whatever. You either took away somebody's livelihood or they
I'm
just
coming to you
said,
about
go
it.
ahead. And that condition power, at about the same time, I think you and Teshi, but anyway, some combination was doing the condition. So we sort of have two convergent powers now. We have our conditional use power, our land power, if you will, and then we amended the state statute to say, unless it's arbitrary or capricious or unreasonable, the same restrictions we have on turning it down, conditions requested by the municipal government shall be made part of the alcohol license. So we sort of have these two convergent powers that we can use to get them to act in the way we'd like.
Thank you for your help, Eric. We appreciated that. Barbara?
We are making progress. I agree with those. We've got some good examples here with In and Out and Captain Jack's or whatever the name of that is. But keep in mind that AMCO has the assembly do this. The local government has this obligation to non-object. So you're not approving it, you're not objecting, or you are protesting, and the reasons for the protest. So there's a couple of different kinds of protests, and Mandy's going to talk about these a little bit more. Some of them are routine protests, like they haven't paid their taxes or we haven't gotten a certification. Those ones are what I'm talking about, but you could have a protest that this is not in the public interest to have this facility located here. And you do have the right to object to that, and you have the right, as long as it is not arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable. And that's what happened with this establishment in Fairview, is that you denied their ability to operate, period. You took away their liquor license because their operations were, I might go as far to say unsafe, and it was a detriment to that community. So you have that power, you have just exercised it very sparingly.
And it is the code says that it's either in the interest of public safety or if it affects the community. So there's options available for that.
And a lot of times when we get a liquor license and renewals, and it says protesting, I'll ask Amy to get a hold of AMCO, because I want to know why we're protesting it. And we'll find out maybe it's for taxes or maybe it's for an ABC violation. Here's the problem with ABC violations. They may be a year so old, they may have resolved it. Normally when it's a clerk that sold a bottle wrongly to somebody, they'll say, we fired the employee. And that's AMCO's response for it. So please look at these as they come through. Because I really would like somebody else to ask Amy. Mandy, she gets tired of hearing from me.
I don't mind at all.
Go ahead, Mandy.
Wait, here, if I could, I just
Yes,
want to make
John.
clear, so we can shut it down.
We can ask to have it shut down.
We can ask to have it shut down. So, but now that one in Fairview, did they not? We said it was not in the public interest when they're operating, so
Right,
they had
and
to
they
stop.
upheld
Did they
us.
lose their license?
Well, I think Mr. Falsey is probably going to have to help me. It's my understanding that the assembly protested the license. It went to AMCO, and the AMCO board agreed with the municipality. So they supported your decision to not renew the license.
But they let them sell the license to
I
somebody
don't think
else,
so
I think.
quite yet, Dick. I think that then they appealed that decision to a hearing officer, and then, I don't remember what happened after that. Do you remember? Huh?
Yes.
No,
Baldwin?
Spirits of Alaska.
This is sort of
Before your time.
slightly before my time. Brexit was still happening while I was on board, so I'm not.
So I think if I recall correctly, what happened is that Dennis Wheeler was your attorney on this matter and represented you, and I believe that you may have either won in front of the hearing officer, but I think the assembly authorized Mr. Wheeler to settle the case for you, because of course the liquor establishment could appeal to Superior Court. And you're back to the same question, was it arbitrary, unreasonable, or capricious? But I think that you still made the decision that you would allow them to sell the license, and that's what Mr. Trainee is referring to.
Sure.
And that's how that was finally resolved and settled. I believe it was, it's called a no premises. They sold it and have no premises. Was the settlement, like, they could not relocate at that location in Fairview? That may have been one of the
They
settlements.
can do a no premises. We found at one time we had a lot of liquor licenses with no premises on them. They were a liquor license without a premises. And Forrest, you had,
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to derail this conversation, but just to ask again, because you might have already mentioned this, when we're talking about imposing conditions on the license, how often could we potentially do that? Is there only specific times we can do that, or could we do that could we call it up and do that sort of at any point?
An excellent question. We clarified on marijuana, it's not very clear on alcohol. I think we'll go ahead.
So you are definitely allowed to do it if it's a new application coming before you,
or renewal.
our renewals.
That's it.
Are we sure
The
that's
rest
it?
of
Yes.
it, we think is unclear, and if you have an issue, we would like to refer you to your counsel, Mr. Gates or Mr. Falsey. We think that they can help you make sure that we navigate to make sure that your imposition of conditions isn't
We can do it on
arbitrary.
application, we can do it on renewal. It's not clear whether we can do it midstream,
I
kind
will
of
tell
thing.
you over the years, it's on application renewal. We've never been successful just midstream. That's the reason we wrote the marijuana laws. We changed it so that we could midstream do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you don't mind, I did
Go ahead.
ask Mr. Gates and Mr. Falsey to look into
That's
this,
fine.
if one of them could answer.
I'd love to be wrong.
If I asked the store I've been reading a little bit about it, so I can't really comment in detail. But there is the ability to midstream have some process where it could affect a liquor license. And there's a plan to describe that in detail in the future.
Wait, you just said that yes, there is a way to do it midstream?
There is a way.
Oh.
How would you
Tell
do
us.
Say
it?
that, Dick?
Okay, he'll,
I'd like to be wrong.
Pete will get us a memo on that? You will?
If you would like.
Yeah, we'd love to understand that better, I think. I would. And a corollary to that, and Mindy, I apologize, it's a great presentation. I'm going to have to leave to catch a plane, but Felix and I had asked, and it turned out to be a bigger job than we anticipated, but how is here's all the conditions we've put on all the licenses project?
It is moving along. I think at this point, we are working on getting a better method to deliver your menu options to you. Because a lot of them are very individualized, and so we're kind of trying to make
So,
it user-friendly.
Part of
Right
the
now,
reason-
and thanks to some of our clerk staff who is here right now, who has been pulling that project together, we have all of those licenses, but we just have the assembly documents. We don't have the actual conditions extrapolated. So we're close, but we don't have something that would make a lot of sense right now. It would just be too many documents.
So we'll get that to you, but so part of the thing is, let's just figure out all the conditions we put on over time. And then Felix and I have started, but anybody's invited, a discussion with the state about enforcement, right? Because we don't typically do spot enforcement on those, and they don't typically they do their core enforcement, but they're not really, which is, are you selling to underage? Are you selling to people inappropriately? Are you not training appropriately? When we have all these weird conditions, it's hard for them to know how to, so we've been talking with them, okay, we get that, and we get that you taking enforcement responsibility for all the conditions we put on is too big a thing. Can we give you a list of 10 of our worst alcohol providers, and where we put conditions, tell you what those conditions are, you know them, so when your guy or gal goes in, they're not just looking for underage, they're looking for, are you selling cheap bottles of vodka? Are you selling the small little, whatever? Did you put the lighting up that we asked? So it was more complicated as sometimes these things are than one thought. I thought it would be easy. You just throw me, so I appreciate all the work you've done. But we'll then at some point here's all our conditions. Which ones do we think are so important we want to ask the state to take special care for?
Barbara, would you do me a favor? Get hold of AMCO and ask them for legal definition on what we can do with the licenses. I appreciate we're going to get one from Dean and Falsey, but I'm interested in AMCO's position on our ability, say midstream, to bring a license up for discussion on we can put restrictions on it. Because ultimately, AMCO is the one we have to appeal to, and I want to know their position on it.
Okay, we'll work on that with Dean and Bill
And
as
since we
well.
have Erica over there, we'll probably get a fast answer.
Okay.
She's outgrown it. She's outgrown it.
Where are you flying to?
Down to Oregon to watch the eclipse.
Ah,
For real?
well, get the right glasses on it. He might have to come back with the white cane or something.
Vampire country.
Go ahead, get
Go ahead,
some
Mandy.
fit in. I'm meeting my ride in about 10 minutes, but go ahead.
Okay. So we've now started the renewal process. Like I said, every year around November, we start receiving them. From the end of 2016 through the beginning of 2017, the clerk's office received about 239 liquor license renewal notifications. Currently, there are a total of 500 licenses within the municipality. The local governing bodies have 60 days from the day they receive notice of a liquor license application from AMCO to respond to the board with either, one, a non-objection to the renewal of the license, and this is kind of what Barbara was talking about, two, a protest of the renewal and the reasons for the protest, or three, a non-objection to the renewal of the license with recommended conditions. There are two types of protests that we use. The most common one, what we were discussing, are what we kind of call the conditional protests. And this means that there are still pending reviews that haven't been completed within that 60-day deadline that we need to respond. So we kind of preemptively protest so that we don't miss our opportunity should there be an issue. And then that allows the applicant the time they need to complete the review process. And then through these, the Assembly has granted the clerk's office the permission to lift that protest on the Assembly's behalf once all of those reviews.
Let's say their taxes are paid, then we lift the protest.
Yeah, and that way you guys aren't bogged down with them coming back to you repeatedly for stuff like that.
I will tell you guys, one time, AMCO actually, when we protested one because of taxes, actually supported us. It was nice to see that happen. Anyway, Mandy, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So the second type of protest is more of a formal protest, and this requires a 21-day notice and a public hearing. So what happens when the clerk's office receives a liquor license renewal application from AMCO? Like I said, we calculate the 60-day deadline. The application is tentatively scheduled for the regular Assembly meeting just prior to, but not exactly on, the 60-day deadline. So next, the process of review begins. The clerk's office reviews the renewal applications and then requests that the Finance Department review for any past due municipal taxes. If there's been any change in the licensed premises, the applicant is required to submit an updated diagram. This triggers a request from the clerk to review, request for review by the Planning Department, the Fire Department, and Building Safety / Code Abatement as well. So once the clerk's office receives certification from the reviewing departments that their review was complete and satisfactory, the clerk's office assembles the liquor license renewal application packets and the Assembly document. The community council resolutions, any notices of violation from the state, any violations from code enforcement, or any community council comments received by the clerk are also included with those renewals. So this is actually the renewal, the review process. You can kind of see we get it from the state. We distribute it and goes through all of the different reviews by the different departments for their areas that they are specialized in, and then it's submitted to the Assembly for final review. So once, the clerk's office then sends notices to the community councils, again, of the liquor license renewal applications within their boundaries, which will be before the Assembly, when the meeting is, and it directs them to submit any comments to the clerk's office or the mass Assembly email.
That's just that subset that we're taking action on, or is it the whole?
Actually, that time, remember, there's now the renewal season is November through February. So Mandy's getting batches, all different times through there. That's why you see little packets on your agenda. So if she gets a batch that's one in Spenard, one in Midtown, and one in South Anchorage, that's why when she sends that to you, it has those community councils on there for that renewals. So she sends them another one when it's actually here. So they got it for all of them, and now they get it specifically. So we're trying to give maximum notice to the community councils when these are up for renewal.
Yeah, so this is a second notice that's sent out, and it's sent out 12 days prior to the Assembly meeting. It just reminds them that these licenses are up for renewal, and it lets them know exactly which meeting they're appearing at. And it, like she said, it gives them a second time to submit comments. It would not be the resolution type of comment at this point, but so if all certifications are received earlier than the tentatively scheduled meeting date, the license is submitted earlier. So like I said, we calculate the 60 days out. the assembly meeting prior to that 60 days is the tentatively scheduled meeting. If all of the reviews are completed earlier than that, we try and move them through as quickly as possible. We don't want to hold people up. And so that moves the date up, and therefore we notify the community council its date has been changed. Now it's at this assembly meeting. If the clerk's office does not receive all certifications from reviewing departments, the application is submitted to the assembly for the approval of a conditional protest pending the certifications that are deficient. And like I said, in this case, the assembly grants the clerks the authority to lift the protest on their behalf once all those deficiencies have been addressed. If all certifications are received and it's on time with the scheduled 60-day meeting, it's submitted to the assembly for an approval of the non-objection to the issuance of the license by the state. Typically, the day after the assembly meeting, the clerk's office sends notice to AMCO about the assembly's actions on each of the licenses, and this satisfies that 60-day requirement. And that's kind of what I have on renewals. If there are any other specific questions on those before I delve into kind of our other liquor licensing stuff.
Any questions from assembly members? Looks like you covered everything.
Ooh, exciting. Well, just know that we will be here to answer questions as they come up, because we always get new and exciting things. So the clerk's office also receives those notices for license applications which are new, transfers of ownership, transfers of stock ownership, transfers of location, and then premises change and restaurant designation permits as well. The assembly reviews all liquor licenses and either approves or objects to the issuance of the licenses. This is kind of a distinction that I want you guys to remember, and I'm sure you know this, but you see all the liquor licenses. And I will get to the conditional uses because that's a little bit different. But for the new and transfer license applications, this includes review by the planning department to certify that an approved conditional use permit, an administrative site plan review, or a special land use permit for alcohol already exists on the premises. If not, the applicant must submit an application for a special land use permit for alcohol to the planning department, which goes through a separate review process. The clerk's office requests reviews by the fire department, the municipal building code and safety, the finance department, and the Department of Health also. Certification of those reviews being complete and satisfactory are sent to the clerk's office for each department. So kind of the difference between the renewal review process and the new go through the full ringer. They get reviewed by everybody. With the renewals, we expect that they've already done this, and unless there's something that has changed or if we've had any complaints, they get a little bit less and they can move through more quickly. So typically they're reviewed for taxes if there's anything due, and then like I said, if there's change in their diagram, then it kind of kicks everybody else in. And so premise change applications, like I was saying, they're reviewed by the departments I just mentioned. The clerk's office has also begun sending emails to the assembly of any premises change applications, as some of them are not required to go before the assembly for approval, depending upon the square footage. If it's less than 500 square feet, you guys don't see those. So the email notification we send out was done because Mr. Trini wanted the assembly to be kept in the loop. And so that's something new that we've added.
What do you want us to call these now, Dick? Slups?
Call it whatever you want. You're the attorney.
Yeah. We need a good nickname for them, okay.
By the way, there's one other category, temporary non-objections. We'll talk about that later, but sometimes we get a request from a bar. Hey, I want to open up, but I can't get my license into you right now. Can I get a temporary non-objection? And we ran them through the assembly, and then the rest of the license will come to us. Just on your term here, you're going to have somebody that says, hey, we got these conditions, we need a temporary non-objection. And so we've approved those in the past. Whole different category, but we've done it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mandy.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, so this, what I've been going through is like the typical process. And it's gonna be the vast majority of the licenses you guys see that come before you. But as Dick was saying, there's always something new and exciting, like AK Alchemist or Spirits of Alaska. So we'll kind of work through those as we come to them. But like for this today, I just kind of wanted to give you guys the general process. So I'm going to kind of move on to the special land use permit portion. And this is not my wheelhouse, so I'm kind of doing it with the licensing portion mainly in mind. I briefly mentioned that the planning department's review of a special land use permit application for alcohol. So I want to remind you all that this is the separate process from the license review, and that you will see two documents. So the assembly will approve the liquor license, and for all of these, but the special land use permits, you may not see all of them. On the license application, you may see a conditional protest for the state issuing the license pending completion of reviews. One of these may be pending completion of a special land use permit. The planning department will submit a separate assembly document, which the assembly approves for the special land use permit. And there's kind of a difference between, this is my slide, beer versus vodka. I'm sure you all remember there's new Title 21, and there's no longer a conditional use permit or an administrative site plan review. Now they're both called special land use permits. But there's still a difference between the restaurant eating place license SLUP and the beverage dispensary SLUP. So I'm going to explain the difference between the two licenses and their corresponding SLUPs. The restaurant eating place is the beer and wine license. These ones are very typical. The SLUPs are approved by the planning department. This type of license is the one you see in restaurants. They're very prevalent. They're everywhere. For the most part, they don't have a very big impact on their communities as far as the license of the alcohol goes. They are more geared towards food sales. They have to have higher food sales than alcohol sales. You have to have a full kitchen. You're going to see real food. They're not like bar food. And for this reason, the assembly delegated the approval of those special land use permits to the planning department. There are no longer any new beverage dispensary licenses being issued by the state, but you're going to see transfers of this type. And this is the full bar. So this license type is usually held by full-fledged bars. They mostly serve drinks. They may serve some food, but their main source of income is from liquor. And this is usually the license type that has more of an impact on the community. These and most of the other license types, such as like package stores, require applications for land use permits to go before the assembly for ultimate approval of their license.
Can we interrupt you for a
and
minute?
special land use permit.
Forrest,
Oh, sorry, Mandy, you might have been getting to this point, but what's the breakdown? How many of the full bar liquor licenses are out there that they're not making any more of?
I do not know the answer to that off the top of my
Great
head.
question,
It's
though.
The 500 number you
saturated.
had was all of them, restaurant
That's
plus?
all,
Yeah,
yeah.
I would have thought we'd have more.
Yeah.
So basically, I finally figured this out, to beer or vodka. Beer is planning, vodka is assembly, right?
So
I
in
like
in that you've got the bar license, now there's also the liquor stores, right?
Yes.
Is that a package store? Is that a separate
Separate
type
category.
of what you're talking about here?
Yeah.
Okay.
But full assembly review.
But full assembly. So the only type that has been delegated to the planning department is the
Beer and
restaurant
wine.
eating place, which is the beer and wine.
So the state has capped the number of sort of full bar licenses. Have they also capped the number of package store licenses?
yes.
Those are dependent upon the saturation of the population, and so they have limits depending on what our population is. And so
What it means to us is they have value.
Right.
And that's the reason with the marijuana license, we changed that factor. We didn't want the secondary market to see what we've done, what's happened with liquor licenses.
So,
because it's gone up the sky. They're probably, I don't know, last time I heard they were $400,000 or something like that.
I'm curious, you don't need to do like a full write-up on this or anything, but at some point if you could email me the capped number of full bar licenses, and potentially package stores if we have that too, I think that's a really good data point for when people talk about the number of marijuana licenses, for example. Yeah, and the restaurants, I think people have a little bit less of an issue with.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mandy, sorry.
So, like I said, Title 21 is not my area of expertise. I didn't want to go into it too deeply, but I just wanted to let you guys kind of get a better grasp on the correlation between the license and the land use, and then the separation from them as well. And that is what I have. So if you guys have any other questions.
Yes, John.
You know, we saw at our meeting yesterday, the Kodiak Bar had 19 pages of calls to the police. Back taxes for, it looked like 4 years or so is huge. Why weren't they shut down? Community Council never noticed?
That
Good
is
agenda.
not one that was during my time, so I do not know about it.
When did they
is it
shut
up-
down?
Is it open now?
No, when did it shut down, do you know? Do you know, Forrest?
I don't know.
And I don't think it was actually shut down because the license was revoked. I think it was just change in ownership.
I know the guy told us
Vacant.
he's have to pay
Yeah.
off the fines
Had like 4 years of
before he's,
tax.
yeah.
It's just amazing to think they could still be allowed to function with that kind of.
Well, you know, I think that's an interesting question, because in the past, when I think it's been fairly recent, that the Assembly protested for taxes, and recently, AMCO actually denied someone.
Like I said, they upheld
So
us.
they may have routinely been reissuing those licenses, but they actually upheld it. We saw them come in and pay their taxes, so we could release our protest. So I think that might be a good
Thanks,
question.
Erica, for that, by the way.
And we could look that up for you, John. I'm curious about that too. How did that happen?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So, anything else, Mandy?
That's all I have.
Barbara?
Like I said, we're getting into the season, so you guys are going to start seeing them soon. And you just finished marijuana.
Anything
Did we?
else, Barbara? Anita?
Nothing else from us. Let us know if you need anything.
Not yet.
And the clerk does a great job when you think about it. Mandy is the focal point for all this. And there are so many of these licenses that come through. And they do a heck of a job for us.
Well,
Very
thank you,
appreciate
Dick.
it.
I would agree with you, and I think all of you know that if you've worked with Sandy, she does a great job. And I asked the rest of our staff to come up that was available today, because they get a lot of questions at the counter and on the phones about this stuff too. So I am glad that you were all here, and they all do a great job.
Would you introduce your new member to
I
us?
would
Because we have
love
more
to.
assembly members here.
I would love to introduce my new staff member. This is Carissa Sleppy. Carissa is your new scheduling assistant, so you're gonna start seeing emails from her about scheduling. And Carissa is from Bethel. She used to work at the court system there. So welcome aboard.
Come aboard, ma'am.
I got a question.
Yes, John.
So you get lots of questions at the counter. Is that citizens going up with a problem bar, or is it people who want to open a bar?
I think mostly it's people asking about the process. It's people wanting to apply and not knowing where to start.
People wanting catering permits for a party or something like that. Those they have to go to the police department for. They get some type of approval from you for that?
The catering permits are AMCO and APD.
Yeah.
And then there's a few other permits. The Parks Department has something to do with them if they're like getting married and they want to serve alcohol in the park. So there's a few different. So we get a lot of directional where you need to go for what.
We've had to pay a lot of attention to caterers permits, because there are some bars that routinely try and get caterers permits. They don't want to, for whatever reason, they don't want to get a bar license, but they have multiple catering permits. And so we then have to question, why are you doing that? Was there a problem going through AMCO to get a bar?
license. So.
We've had that
They did
before.
put a cap on those. They're only allowed to have 12 a year, so one a month, so to kind of remedy that issue.
But we've done a lot of things. I mean, we restricted in some cases the size of bottles they can sell. One time, Tesh and I required a package store downtown to put labels on what they were selling, so we could tell where the packages were coming from. Because we found those little shooters, and without being able to tell where they came from, you had no idea. So there was one downtown package store years ago. We required them to put labels on all of them. They did not like that. Just to let you know that comes up again, industry hates it. But thanks for being here. Work session's over with.